Okay, I'm hoping that we're live. Good afternoon, Frankston. It has been a lovely weekend. I don't know about you, but I spent most of yesterday clearing out the gutters and getting on with the gardening before fitting in a little bit of exercise. And this morning, again, long walk along the beach. Cannonook Creek's actually looking really clean at the moment, which was a bit of a surprise. So welcome to Sunday afternoon. This is our Sunday sessions, the second one in a row I think that we've now done. Welcoming back Peter Malone, Sue Baker and Brad Hill. I have extended the invitation out to candidates across the city to join us. We're not getting a fantastic response on that, but I am looking forward in the coming days and weeks having more candidates join us for these discussions. Tuesdays and Fridays, candid conversations focusing on policy. Sunday, much more relaxed, enjoying the weekend and just talking about the topics that have caught our eye this week. Worth noting that tomorrow is the last council meeting before they go into caretaker mode. We might come back to that a bit later on. But also, I think myself and Sue dialed into the Mayor's Picnic this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, which was a bit of a farewell for Sandra, Mayor, who has been our Mayor for the last year. I think she's retiring after 12 years on council or something like that.
12 years, yeah.
Yeah, 12 years, an extraordinary effort. And I think hats off to Sandra for what has been a pretty impressive way in which she has carried herself through what's been a difficult term. So what were your thoughts of the Mayor's Picnic?
Yeah, hi everyone. I loved it. It was an hour packed with all sorts of cameos of some of our local talent, some youngsters stepping up to sing. I didn't know we had a voice project winner as well. That was really cool. So that's that Greg, let's have a look, what's his name? Harrison Cray. But the local acts, so Boness, CC, Shana, and then there was a fabulous band, Grey Horizon. So it was really cool actually having all these acts beamed into my kitchen. And given we talked about the arts and entertainment last week sometime, it's actually triggered a whole range of thoughts in my head about generating some entertainment depending on how quickly restrictions get lifted in quite a different way. So I thought it was really, really cool. And then a big shout out for lots of community organisations, individuals and groups who've been keeping services going, supporting different groups in the community. So that was great. And of course, Sandra singing a song, which was fabulous. So that's her next career move, and I think she acquitted herself very, very well, I have to say, in terms of taking that next step. So all in all, it was a fabulous event.
It really was actually a great production, and with no pun intended, fantastic swan song for Sandra too. Peter and Brad, you've both been around Frankston a long time. If you were to sum up Sandra's last 12 years, what would you say?
When I was on the council last time, I was elected in 2008, and that's when Sandra also was elected. So I was on the council there for 4 years with Sandra, and she arrived in the council, like me, a little bit wet behind the ears, a little bit unsure of how a lot of it worked. And she, from my perspective, she developed really, really well. The one thing I would say about Sandra is that she has a good heart. Her heart's in the right place. She's genuine. She's honest. Her intentions are honourable. She was mayor twice. She ran the meetings impartially. I didn't know Sandra before she was elected, and she's done a sterling job. I'm sorry that she's leaving. It's a loss for Frankston. However, she's put in 12 years, you know, I can't take anything away from her.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brad. And Peter, any last reflections?
Yeah, look, the impression you got about Sandra being a resident is that you didn't hear about her for bad reasons, right?
Yeah,
She really, you know, that's a very notable thing. You didn't hear about her. She was never highlighted for the wrong reasons at all. She seemed to be one of those, you know, well, councillors and when she was mayor, who could put oil on troubled waters, perhaps, try to bring a bit of calm to storms. And I think, yeah, she seems a lovely person. I'm very, very interested in her career moves. Good luck to her, really good luck to her, because she deserves it. And I'd agree with Brad. It's her leaving is a bit of a loss for Frankston Council. She seemed a lovely person, and you never heard about her for the wrong reasons, as I say, which is a good thing considering the last some troubled years there. Yeah,
she's always done the right thing. She's never, involved herself in anything underhanded or dishonest or anything like that. And I can't say that for everyone there, but yeah, with Sandra, wears her heart on her sleeve. For what you see is what you get.
I think she's a very trusting person too.
Definitely, yeah.
So I think you know a quick sort of clap for Sandra to say thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah, well done, Sandra. We certainly, irrespective of whether any of us get elected, I do hope you stay engaged with Frankston Council, irrespective. And I also know that you've been doing a huge amount of work to encourage more women to put themselves forward for council as well. And I'd just like to say thank you for that as well, because the role model that you provide is a role model for people like my daughter as well. So thank you very much, Sandra.
And this wasn't well known, but I might just add, she did all of this over 12 years as a single mother. She started off her 12-year term with 2 young children, and she's raised them on her own, alongside all of her commitments to the council and making sure those 2 kids were educated and had a roof over their heads. So yeah, absolutely inspirational.
Yeah, hats off to her. Yeah.
Yeah. Oliver Hill, candidate for the West Ward, has also chimed in with woo Sandra. I'm hoping that was meant to be woohoo, Sandra. I was out in the West Ward, as you can see behind me this morning, but no sign of Oliver, but there's definitely something fishy going on over there. So that's the Mayor's Picnic. Now, all 4 of us, now come on, Brad, dad jokes are okay.
That was terrible.
That's a super dad joke, Stephen.
God.
I think it went over my head, actually.
Yeah. I should probably practice these on my kids before we go live. We all, along with a number of other candidates, joined in a discussion that was hosted by the Committee for Greater Frankston about changes to the Nepean Highway area. They look like really interesting plans, and we got some examples from a representative from state government who also talked about similar work that had been done in Ringwood, similar work that was being done in Springvale, and so on. Might be worth just having a bit of a chat about our reflections on that. So it's been a couple of days since we were first sort of presented with those ideas.
Yeah, I came away feeling really excited, actually. It was super to hear from someone from the Vic Roads organisation, Vince Finaro, and he explained the restructuring of his organisation so they could be more focused on both roads and the environments of those roads to give a more holistic service to communities where they get involved. And I think he was probably just bringing up a plan that had been discussed about 4 years ago. So it wasn't necessarily a current revisiting of what proposals had been made. However, it generated some discussion. Lots of people, obviously, from the Committee for Greater Frankston there, business owners in the area who have a real vested interest in supporting some changes. But I loved it. I mean, I cycle up there and I thought, oh yeah, a proper cycle path, that would be amazing. And cafes to stop at and get a coffee or something to eat, and then be able to hop across to the beach and come back up. You know, I just thought, wow, this is really exciting. So for me, thinking about that in relation to the Frankston 2040 visioning work that started, it just struck me as a piece of the puzzle that everyone can start talking about. It was a conversation starter for me, for people who are interested to start doing that, talking about it. So that's, yeah, for me.
I guess for me, it was nice to see that people are thinking about improving the Peen Highway, and it isn't just a Peen Highway, by the way, that needs improvement, but a plan like that is terrific. It's not the first time we've had it talked about. I guess what's important is what happens next, right? So having a plan that sits on a shelf, which, you know, is again, has happened a number of times before, without any money behind it, without any tie-in of the required stakeholders, right? So we've seen an idea from Vic Roads. We have some people from the community for Greater Frankston who are interested in it. But I think in parallel, the property owners along there also have to be on board, you know, because we can improve the streetscape. But if you've got all those properties there that are empty or derelict, or even if they are occupied, a lot of them looking quite ordinary. And what I didn't see last Friday was any talk of engagement with those people. Nor did I see any talk of any commitment of actual funding from anyone. So as Sue mentioned, yeah, I think it's a great conversation. It's a great first step, but we have to have those other stakeholders jumping on board. And look, even the council has to show a willingness to approve developments down there. We have had some planning applications approved and went nowhere because the property owner hasn't developed. We've also had another ones refused outright for various reasons. But the council has to be clear, I think, to the property owners and to developers, come to some kind of understanding. We're expecting this. When you put your application we want you to have this height and this outlook or whatever. And if you do all that, you will have your permit. But until then, all we're talking about is altering lanes and sticking some trees in, and it isn't enough.
I mean, certainly there was, I think the thing that came out at the end was, if you don't have a strategic vision which encompasses all of those things, then actually you're just kind of fiddling at the sides a little bit. Peter, we've got a few comments, but I'll maybe get you to share your reflections first.
Yeah, okay. Look, I felt very positive coming out of it. I know, like Brad, it's that strategic thing. You look at the steps that have to be in place to get to the goal. It's absolutely correct. But I did feel positive about the meeting. There was at one point where I spoke, and I was one Peter, and I think there was another Peter there, and I think it was the other Peter was supposed to have been speaking, but that was a bit of confusion. But that way I got an opportunity. And I was talking about the buildings, as Brad was talking about just then. It's a point. I know that Brad put a comment down on that session too about buildings, and I put a comment down, what's the hardest thing? And remember that 9-point list? And buildings was there. And I said, what's the hardest thing in this, this feedback of what's wanted to change? If we have funding, I understand there's been something like maybe $700,000 from Vic Roads that's been sitting there. Now, I understand also that this proposal was put forward. It might be a bit more than 4 years. Brad will tell us. Was it about 5 or 6 years ago? It was a fair while ago, because I think it started in a council just before this one, and then it wasn't agreed. That nothing was agreed. Nothing has happened. It might have been a bit of a difficult situation for the first council who had to consider it, but then 5 or 6 years is, it's been languishing there, and the money's been languishing, and that's I think the problem. So to hear something about starting again, and there's a few chess pieces that will be put into play, like the council. Who's the council going to be? How positive are they going to be? Planning, that's a big one, and for the rest of Frankston too. Criteria, what will be permitted or not. Make that very clear, and that's, I absolutely agree with Brad there, because not just there, but look for the whole of Frankston. You've got other places. So yeah, I'm all on. It'd be a great thing to happen, and I hope it can start in earnest with a new council.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I was excited to hear that there was still an agenda on the table with some stakeholders about taking that forward. Nikki Foster, Oliver Hill, and a couple of other people have asked about, how do you get involved in these things? And I think we were specifically invited by Committee for Greater Frankston to attend this briefing session. But I can throw some light on that, actually.
I can throw a little bit of light on that.
Yeah.
I think I was having a conversation with Ginevra Hoskins about some other things, and I noted that they were having their AGM on Friday, and that ahead of that we're having this presentation, and I said, that looks really interesting. Is it okay for me to just dial in and listen? And she said, would you be interested? And I said, interested, of course. This is really super cool to hear that someone's coming to talk to your group.
Yeah.
And then I'm putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 4 here. But I noticed she then invited all the candidates to come and get on board, as the committee are also wanting to get feedback from all candidates about views on the city. So I think we were kind of gate crashing their AGM a little bit.
I think you did a good thing.
But then just revitalising that conversation. I think that's all it was.
Well, I thank you for your initiative there, Sue. I think that was great. I think what it does highlight, and I had a really good conversation last week with Nikki Foster. She's a local architect and runs a couple of other businesses in town. And there's for me, there are 2 things about this. One is we've got to make sure that the right stakeholder consultation happens, and that was very clear during the briefing as well, that if you don't get that stakeholder buy-in really early, you run the risk of losing sight of what that kind of vision and purpose is that you're trying to achieve. And then the other thing I think is really quite critical is to make sure that not just in terms of the streetscape, but in terms of building designs that are either modified or new builds, that greater consideration is given to the design features of those buildings and how they then sort of integrate with the seascape that we have in Frankston, because the opportunity is there. We've just got to make sure that we're very, very clear about how we get there. And what sort of city we would like to see.
Yeah. Agreed.
Speaking of new things in cities, I think this might have actually started out of the city of Maribyrnong, but I know that Mornington Peninsula Shire have picked up on it. I know there's been some discussion in different forums for Frankston, the Frankston area as well, about this idea of parklets and kind of extending. We saw the state government announcements earlier in the week around enabling hospitality venues to extend their catering more onto the footpath, and there's various grants and things available. If we were to do something like that in Frankston, what would it look like?
Oh, look, I think it would be great to get different parts of, not just the CBD, but different parts of Frankston and across the wards coming up with some ideas. I'd listened to a mayor of one of the other Bayside cities talking about their plans for parklets and play streets. So actually closing off some areas so that kids can get outside and do their thing, but also you can have parklets where you might have pop-up cafes or the coffee van or something happening, and the people are going as far as landscaping what that could look like, and I guess things like temporary boxes with trees in, or street furniture, or pop-up restaurant furniture. So I think it would be great to think that we could encourage something like that in different parts of Frankston, so people can walk somewhere. So not getting in a car or getting on the bus, but could walk to their local parklet or play street and get out and about.
I think one thing we need, be good to look at in Frankston, is the amount of green space and areas that we have and what we might try and create. One idea has been around for a while, I think, and that is Wells Street. Does Wells Street, or part of it, could it become not a thoroughfare but more a mall, and an area where you could expand so that you couldn't go from one end to Wells Street to another, perhaps down the highway end, keep that open, but in front of the cinemas, the rest, is there a possibility of that concept? I actually probably wouldn't mind throwing to Brad to see whether that's been considered in the past. I thought it might have been, perhaps.
There's what I discovered when I was elected to the council is that there's no shortage of great ideas.
Yeah.
Everyone has a vision or an idea, and why don't you do that, and you ought to do this. And what there is a shortage of is two things. One is agreement amongst councillors.
Yes.
And number two is money.
Yeah.
Right. So, personally, I'd like to see some open space in the middle of the Frankston CBD. I think it's probably a good time to buy property. It's low, interest rates are low if you need to loan. Trying to convince your councillors that, at least a majority of them, that this is a high priority, because everyone's got their own priorities, is the other trick. So yes, it has been. Yes, it has been thought of before, but it's what is a common sense idea to you and I may not be for everybody else.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, I would love to do that.
I mean, I know it's coming up for discussion at council tomorrow night. We've also got to remember that Frankston is more than just the CBD area as well. So if you were to kind of apply this to some of the strip shopping areas around, Foot Street, there's another one that's at Overport Road and Ewell Street, Norman Avenue. There's a couple. There's there's a smaller one out in Langwarrin. I think it's near sort of North Road, Warrandyte Road. And all those, and Seaford. You've got a couple in there as well. Would that be the kind of thing that would actually work in those locations? And is that what people would actually want to see and engage with?
It would be great to ask the question, wouldn't it? To ask of the local communities or the people that have got shops on those small shopping strips. Would that benefit them? Would that be of help? Have they got a customer base who would come out in greater numbers to have a coffee, or rather than having a takeaway, sit and eat whatever it is they're buying from that particular shop? Because some of these little shopping strips at the moment look very sad, very lonely. They're very quiet. They just need an injection of life. And there are a lot of people around each of the shopping areas that would drive, would be able to walk to them and get their coffee or a sandwich or something to eat. So I think it's a community question, first of all, and then it's engaging with the businesses in those areas to see if that's something that they're up for organising and wanting to do. Yeah,
certainly different parts have their challenges as well. I mean, I mean, Stephen, you sort of mentioned a number of places there, and I think, and Sue, there's some places which will lend themselves to this. Norman Avenue, for instance, has a little bit of outside, a little bit. It'd be good if there was more, but just the way that's landscaped, it probably would be hard to do it there, but certainly there's other places where it'd be a lot easier. So it comes down to, is there money, grants, to look at doing this? As we say, if there's something being offered by the state government, well, yeah, but each segment of the community, so you've got the greater Frankston community, but probably what you're alluding to is each segment of the community should be reached out to and asked what their opinion is about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I mean, noting that it is on the council agenda for tomorrow night, I mean, it does beg the question around what level of consultation is actually taking place with business owners in Frankston and how they actually see they may or may not be able to utilise that. I guess we'll find out tomorrow night.
We should be watching tomorrow night.
Yep, indeed we should. Indeed we should. Michael Johns thinks we're a bit too boring. So maybe we should maybe we should spice it up a little bit. The council have their last meeting tomorrow night before caretaker mode. 856 pages of agenda and attached documents. It sounds like it's going to be an awfully long meeting. There's a whole bunch of different things on there. Any reflections or thoughts on what we might expect to see tomorrow night?
It'll be interesting. You know, I think the councillors there that are rerunning for election, you can expect them to be outspoken. You can expect some stand-up grand speeches from some of them. You can expect them to say things that are popular. You can expect them not to say anything divisive or contentious. So I think we'll have a special election night council meeting is what you can expect tomorrow.
So just like the last sitting before the dissolution of Parliament in Canberra.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So
like
they can
campaigning.
Well, it's campaign. Yeah, they aren't allowed to campaign, but you know they can. Yeah, they can try and make themselves look look really good. So you can expect that.
You think, particularly in regard to the yacht club, they might try and close out on that one because that's their last chance to try and close out in some way with the yacht club. I'm going to find it interesting to see where they get to with that.
Well, that's it. I mean, a result on the yacht club would be a good look. Standing up and saying, you know, the lack of car parking is outrageous, and that's also perhaps potentially popular. And that's what I don't really like about making decisions, even though we're still outside caretaker, is that you know the decision-making process isn't necessarily the best thing for Frankston. No. We might be looking at the best thing, you know, what they reckon that makes them look good.
Yeah.
I just hope we have some good decisions made tomorrow night and going into this caretaking time where there won't be any meetings. If things do need to be sorted out to tide us over this period, that would be great. And also it'll give all the sort of candidates who are standing for election at the moment some food for thought around what issues are hanging and what issues do need to be debated, what do we need to get our heads around and start thinking about. So I think tomorrow's meeting will be a good one for all of us as candidates, but also for people in Frankston to really understand what's happening to their city at the moment.
I think if you really want to know about their performance, it's the last 4 years that need to be looked at, not just the night.
And no doubt, you know, for some councillors, it'll also be a bit of a kind of valedictory moment as well. For I don't want to sort of say the ones that we know are not intending to run for re-election, but there are some people who've been on there for a very long time. We've already noted Sandra, of course, but I think we do need to recognise the time and effort and personal sacrifice that a lot of these people have made over a very long period of time. And even for those who are standing again, even if they're not re-elected, is to kind of recognise that it does take a huge amount of personal commitment to put yourself in the spotlight quite a bit as well.
It does. And I think Sandra May is a very interesting case because she was never about promoting herself.
Mm-hmm.
She was never about, trying to be, the person front and centre. She was good at her job and she concentrated on her job. And the voters recognised that and they voted her in consistently, right? So she's retiring on her own terms. She's not being voted out. This election, if she was running, she would be voted in again. You don't need to try hard. You just need to concentrate on the job and do a good job, honestly and fairly. That's what she did, and it worked for her very well.
Definitely. She was known as not being self-centered. She actually did things for the community.
Absolutely right. She was there for the right reasons. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, look, we know things like the yacht club are on the agenda for tomorrow night. We also know that there's a whole bunch of town planning applications that are on the table as well. There are various council reports, including the audit report, which I think is probably worth having a look at for people who ahead of going into caretaker mode as well. What happens with the new council when they come in and they've inherited these decisions or inherited these reports? Is it a case of reinventing them, or is it a case of actually picking them up and then running with them?
The new councillors are not bound by previous council decisions. So, for example, I recall a councillor passing a motion that any spend over X amount of $1 million has to be decided on by a plebiscite of the people of Frankston, right? Mm-hmm. And he did that motion on the last night of the council term, right? So it was clearly aimed at the next lot of council. Here's what you're going to be stuck with, or here's what you have to be bound by. But it was pointed out by council officers in that meeting. You're unable to do that to the next term of council, right? So what you are bound by as a new councillor is the strategy and the policy documents that previous councils have adopted. Right. So a motion directing you to do something not valid, but the council would have a strategy in place, related to councillor expenses, for example, related to community houses, community gardens, whatever it is, and that's a council policy. That's a council strategy that's in place, right? Those can be changed. However, until they are changed, you're expected to, with your decision making, to comply with those things.
Yeah, and that, sorry, go ahead, Sue.
I understand as well that the governance team at the council has a very significant role to play with new councillors as well, just supporting and guiding what the sort of principles are and approaches and the protocols around how to get set up in your role as a councillor, and as Brad's saying, then introduce you to what's currently in train, what are the matters of the day that need to be sorted out. And it is about supporting the work of council. It's not sweeping in and making a whole new set of resolutions. The community has already been consulted, there are already decisions that have been made, and it's about supporting those just as much as it is continuing to build on the work of what the region needs.
And what's going to happen with new councillors when you come in, you're coming in after a caretaker period when no major decisions have been made. So the work of the council doesn't stop during caretaker. Town planning applications, for example, don't stop. They just stop reaching the councillors. So what's going to happen as a new councillor? You come in and there's all this stuff in the backlog that you're hit with. And I came in off the street, and all of a sudden, in the first council meeting, there is major town planning decisions and town planning applications that I had to vote on, and it's quite overwhelming at first. So yeah, the council officers will help you to get up to speed. They're excellent. They answer questions. They direct you to training. What's nice this time with this election is the Electoral Commission has directed all candidates to do an online training course, which at least provides everybody an understanding of what the actual job is. So that was a good thing.
Just on that point, I think it highlights to me the importance. We may or may not get in. We don't know. The electors will decide. But it highlights the importance of some of these background experience and what you've done already. I imagine if you come into council, there's things you don't know. But if it's just a small amount you don't know, maybe you've been, doing a similar thing on a board somewhere. I don't want to highlight that too much. But if you've got experience, experiences that will help you out, then there'll be a certain amount that's new. And if you're reasonably experienced at these things, there's an amount you have to rote learn. Now, you have to rote learn it, but I imagine that somebody who has no experience of making decisions on finances and these sorts of things and high-priced items, it would be very daunting. So it's up to the electors, of course, just to look at who's asking to be voted in and asking for their vote, and just having a look. They might say, well, Malone, you got something there, but somebody else is better. Well, that's fine. Judge people against each other. But experience does really count in these things, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of sort of experience, character, values, and that ability to work across diverse teams. And even if it doesn't mean everyone has to like each other, but they've got to at least be able to work together. And that's really quite critical.
To be professional, be respectful.
Yes.
Sorry, Sue.
Something I noted the other day was that in addition to the candidate statements that will go out on everyone's ballot papers, all candidates are asked to make a note of their experience and their vision for the city that they live in. And that information gets posted on the BEC website. So it's good to know that. And I'm sure some people may already know and make a beeline to check credentials in the background, but it's just another source of data if people don't know about that option to tap into, and then they can look at all the candidates. It's not mandatory for candidates to complete, but I think it's a helpful thing to, as you were saying, Peter, you can spell out specific experience and transferable skills that could be of value to the council.
It's good that you highlight that, Sue, because it's I suppose you might wonder about anybody who doesn't fill that in. Just saying that, everybody should put something there, and your eyes will fall on what and who you are. That's fair enough, really.
I mean, this is the really important thing. It's local democracy. And I think Brad said it last week. Is local government's the closest you get to the people, if you like. It's where the rubber hits the road. And whether you're there as a candidate or whether you're there as a voter, you really need to understand who it is you're voting for, because we've seen what can happen if you don't get it right. We've seen other councils be suspended and administrators put in their place. And so it's really important that you kind of, given the restrictions that we've got on campaigning, we're not allowed to go out and door knock and talk to people. You know, we're limited to the amount of letterboxing that we can do. We can't go and address public forums and really engage people in a way that a traditional campaign would be run. And that's not about politics. That's about actually being able to communicate with people before they make that decision on the ballot paper, and actually understand that at the end of the day, how their rates get spent, what the local planning schemes are going to be, what things are going to be brought forward for our community, really depends on people doing their research, checking out candidate Facebook pages, making sure there's some depth there, checking out their websites if they have one, looking at their professional background and all of these different kinds of things. I would urge people to be cognizant of that and to really think quite carefully about how they make their decisions. And by golly, if a candidate knocks on your door, you tell them to go away, because they shouldn't be doing it.
There's another point I'd like to make regarding people for running for council as well. You will, as a councillor, cop some flack, right? You do need to have a thick skin. There are decisions that you'll be asked to make in the council chamber where it doesn't matter which way you vote, against or for, that you will be making someone unhappy. You don't, as a councillor, you don't ask for these things to appear on the agenda before you. They land at your feet. You have to make a decision. You'll get people email you or ringing you, sometimes nasty and abusive. You will get people talking about you on social media in the same way. And that's just the world that we live in. It's appalling. It's wrong. We all ought to be mature and respectful of each other. However, it does happen. It's even worse when it happens within a council from your fellow councillors. And you know, I'm very hopeful in the next term that doesn't happen. But it absolutely will happen from the public, especially with these keyboard warriors on the internet with no, with no respect or manners.
Yeah, I have been a little bit surprised, even just by sticking your hand up as being a candidate, that some of the vitriol that comes your way without actually engaging in a conversation with someone. Sue, did you want to add to that?
Oh, John, I was just checking a couple of details on something. I watched a great ABC program last night on Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Some of you will know that she is one of the Chief Justices in the Supreme Court of the US, and made some phenomenal strides in equality for women in the US over a very long career. And I think it's just helpful to have role models who demonstrate how you can achieve a great deal without fear or favour, just by sticking to your values and having a clear focus on what the role is that you're aiming to fulfil and what you want to deliver. And particularly in community service, you are there because the community has asked you to be their voice. And with such a diverse community, as Brad was saying, not everyone is going to agree about everything all of the time, but really being able to be clear about the principles and the values that you represent, and then follow through on those consistently time and again, I think is really important. And she is just a current, very present role model, I guess, in terms of being a woman that's campaigning at the moment to see more about her career and her role. But still no trolls on my site, I'm happy to report.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that, Sue. Maybe you've got the right filters on.
Maybe that's what it is. Be nice or don't bother.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely, you're absolutely spot on. Ruth, just her life story is just extraordinary. And if my daughter was to ask, what sort of role models should she look for, then definitely should be one of the ones at the top of the list as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just really quite extraordinary woman.
I'll just say quickly, she was one of the role models for my daughter, and it's probably why she got into the law, and basically in Canberra now advising politicians.
Mm.
Won't say any more than that, but she's advising. And I did ask one day, how's it working with them? And she said, Dad, we just advise, okay? We don't make the decisions. I said, fair enough.
But I do quite a bit of, I spend a little bit of time up in Canberra for work, and have to occasionally I'll go and visit government departments, and I'll stop in at Parliament House. And I've got to say that probably 9 times out of 10, when I have private meetings with politicians of all different shapes and colours and so on, 9 times out of 10, there are positive discussions. 9 times out of 10, they actually listen, and you understand going into it that they've got different interests or different levers that are being pulled, pulling them in one way or another. And you know, I think it's the same for councillors. I think most of the councillors that I've dealt with have actually been very personable and have wanted to engage. We're going to just come back to the to tomorrow night's agenda. This one cropped up. I think it was Oliver Hill, the candidate for West Ward, brought this up. Quite an interesting one around the preservation of the Frankston signal box. So I don't know if everyone's aware, but there's a sort of a heritage signal box. I can remember growing up in Eltham having one of those as well. It's looking a little bit shabby. Oliver Hill, candidate for West Ward, put up an idea about approaching the railways to get it spruced up. What are your thoughts on that one?
Ought to be spruced up and retained. Absolutely, it's you know, it's a part of our landscape. It's part of our. It's been there that long. You know, it's hard. The place would look empty without it if that wasn't there. Having said that, a friend of mine at the railways has spent a lot of time in the box. He knows it quite well. He tells me it's quite rickety. You know, in a strong wind, the place moves. So it'll need work. The other point that was made as well, you do hear ideas about, you know, let's turn it into this or that, or a bar, or a community hall or whatever. It'd be really hard to do anything with it because of the accessibility issue. You know, trying to make access compliant for people who are disabled, etc., would be really awkward. Or even trying to make access safe for able-bodied people, you know, to get up and down the stairs. So its potential use will have challenges, but it absolutely ought to be retained and spruced up. Look, at the very least.
Yeah, I agree with Brad. I walked past it, well, when I was actually going to work at the TAFE there, which is just opposite the station, of course. You walk down Beach Street and you cross over there, and I've seen it in high winds, and I'm worried about, I wouldn't want to be in it. It is a bit rickety. The access thing, well, it's you know, I don't think it's viable for that, but I don't think it'd take too much to spruce up, quite frankly. I mean, you may even get possibly some community effort, or some businesses that might be willing to help. I don't think it's too big a deal, but I think it's absolutely worth saving. And spruced up, it would look really good. It would be good. I think it should be saved for what it is, as a historical piece.
And it's a nice juxtaposition against the modern Frankston station.
Absolutely.
It looks really cool.
All right, that brings up a really important point there, Sue, is, and I had a fantastic conversation with somebody during the week around, you know, how do you make sure that you kind of preserve a lot of the kind of heritage architecture around Frankston, and you know, and it's like, yes, we want to see more development. Yes, we want to see Frankston grow and thrive and revitalise the centre as well. But there's also some really nice examples of, you know, mid-century architecture, not just in the city area. I think a lot of the old stuff's already gone, but sort of dotted around, there's quite a lot of heritage houses and so on. It'd be lovely to see how we could make sure that we retain that mix of the old and the new in a place like Frankston.
Yeah, I'm sure there are lots of people who've got views on that, maybe even part of the council planning department. I don't know, we'll have some views on heritage buildings. And I know one was mentioned, sort of cottage in Ballon Park, and some work had been done to develop that. And that's a fabulous place to go and visit and have a look at, and it'll be great to go back when it's open and have a look around. But I agree, having that mix of maintaining the heritage and the history of the place whilst also recognising we're moving forward into different decades and centuries, and what are our needs now as a community, and balancing that out is important, I think.
Yeah.
I think, look, I don't know anybody who doesn't want our heritage and our history looked after and retained. I think where it becomes an issue is when we start opposing redevelopment of something just because it's old.
Yeah.
Right. It needs to be historic. It needs to be significant. Just an old house, for example. I'd need some. I think there needs to be a balance, but that signal box, absolutely no doubt, that is just absolutely one of a kind.
Yeah.
It needs to be retained.
Yeah. I'll just say about, I go with what Brad's just said, in the sense that just because something's old doesn't necessarily mean it has heritage value. It's heritage value, and some things could be looked at to be heritage listed, and there could be some kind of like planning sort of contingencies that say, well, you can redevelop this site, but this is heritage listed. So if you can actually build and refurbish or even rebuild part of it, fine, but keep these features, keep the important features. Some things might be totally should be kept and refurbished as a heritage item. So it's an item by item, which is not saying anything astounding. Once again, it's an item by item thing. But generally speaking, the box should be kept and refurbished. The future member for West Ward wants. I agree with him totally. Other things, heritage listed, heritage value. I'm in favour of keeping them, but not just because it's old. Yeah.
So you and I have both lived in the UK and spent a lot of time in Europe as well, where preserving the kind of heritage and combining it with the new to create more space and more usage of places is actually fairly commonplace town planning approach. Have you got any particular reflections on that?
Oh, look, I spent some time living in Henley-on-Thames, and that's a very old town, and some of the old buildings there have actually been repurposed. So you might keep the outside of the building and the look and feel with the streetscape or that particular part of the town, but inside what once was a house might now be a mini art gallery, or it might be a cafe, or it might have been converted into co-sharing offices. So having sort of first-hand experience of the very old combining with the very new needs, absolutely it's workable. And as with anything, it's when there's a real desire and a passion and a will to be innovative and create, that's there are always answers, there are always options, just a matter of consulting.
And that really comes back down to kind of thoughtful planning and thoughtful design, because I think quite often when we put forward ideas for different kinds of buildings or structures or places, we think about function. We don't necessarily think about the aesthetics of that and how it fits with the kind of environment and the place that we're actually in as well. I also want to just flag, Joe Price has made a very important comment there, which is that if we talk about, I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, but if we talk about Frankston history, there's also a very long history of Indigenous occupation of this area. There's the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. We do have a local Indigenous group here. NAM, I'm trying to remember how to say the name completely. Brad, you might need to help me out here. But it's NAM Jambana, I think. And they do they're actually doing a lot of online stuff as well around Indigenous culture. But it's something that I have to say, I'm surprised I've not seen more of it within Frankston itself, given how rich that kind of history and culture is. And I'd hope that in an incoming council, there'd be much greater celebration of that.
The council has a very good relationship with the local Indigenous community and the Indigenous groups. There is I believe, a policy in place around that. And yeah, look, it's 2020. It's not 1920. It's not 1820. And in 2020, that's just how it works today, right? We are respectful. We recognise, who they are. We recognise how long they've been here. We recognise they are the custodians of the land, and we work hand in hand with them. And that's what the council's been doing. And I don't reckon there's any number of councillors who would be able to stop that. And I would hope they wouldn't even try.
I'll just say that at the opening of the TAFE buildings, the new TAFE buildings recently, we certainly had representatives there that day for the opening ceremony, and the feeling was really good. And it's that thing of going forward together. That's what the Aboriginal community wants, and I think that's what we should all celebrate. As Brad said, we're 2020. We go forward together as a nation and recognise them. Sort of picking up a bit of that sentiment, Stephen, I think it'd be great to see a bit more visual of Aboriginal presence, in history in Frankston. How we do that would be take careful and sensitive discussion, of course, with the Aboriginal groups. But that would be a great thing to see. It'd be a wonderful thing to see. And that would enthuse people to get a little more interested and learn about the Aboriginal history. And about Aboriginal culture, which I find fascinating. A good friend in Brisbane, he's a great guy. He's Al, and Al is Aboriginal as they come, but gosh, he's a clever guy. I've certainly gone up there a little bit rattled and need a break, and I talked to him about things. And he says, "Yes, but you realise it's just all a game, and you're fitting in with me." And he's just got such wise counsel. And I go, "Oh gosh, Al, you're right. What am I worried about?" So yeah, it's great to have that contact with Aboriginal people, but a bit more of a presence would be good.
Yeah.
So we're both immigrants.
Oh, do you know, I was just thinking, my mum was a primary school teacher, and this is back in the UK, and she used to teach Aboriginal dream time, probably back in the 70s and 80s, and having never been to Australia. So whether she got it right or wrong, or all the nuances, I don't know, but she was always fascinated with Indigenous peoples around the world, and the Aboriginal Dreamtime stories was something that captured her imagination. So anyway, that's just a little by the by story. But yeah, absolutely. I think it would be fabulous to have, I don't know, more visual representation of that heritage of ours, whether it's murals, whether it's in plantings, whether it's in sculptures. It would be great, and to find out what would be valid and relevant. I think it would be great to do.
Yeah, I think one of the real challenges around Indigenous heritage, particularly in Victoria and in Frankston, is we just don't know what we don't know. I didn't really have a full appreciation of it until I went to a conference in Cairns last year, and one of the things they did whilst I was at the conference is they took us to an Indigenous cultural night experience. Was a particular venue that had been set up, and it just completely opened my eyes in a way that I hadn't actually seen it before. If I look at how New Zealand has brought together both the kind of modern Western culture with Maori culture, I think there is almost a bit of a role model for us there in terms of how we should be really embracing it as a community. We're drawing on time now. Any last reflections before we head into the week? We're at the pointy end of the campaign.
I'm just going to answer Natalie's question about the backdrops. I don't know if she's still listening, but it is our beach from Long Island down to Frankston on a day when the tide had gone out particularly a long way. So that stretched actually from Seaford Pier. I think I was walking back one day, and it was just a fabulous experience to be on a broad beach. It isn't always going out as far as it does, but that's where it is. And I love walking on the beach.
I have to say, Seaford Beach is one of my favourite beaches in Frankston.
Yeah.
But I do like the pier, and I keep getting out there to try and see if I can spot Oliver Hill.
Yeah, get the binoculars out. You'll need them.
You won't be out there campaigning.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'll just say I'll just follow on quickly. Sorry for pushing in, Brad. If I did, I don't know, because it's a beach theme as well. So I'll follow on and say that yes, it was a good day. And I was saying to Sue earlier, I walked along the beach that day. It was fabulous to have the tide out so far. I hope this is not too negative, but it gives me a better chance to pick up the little pieces of plastic that I carry the Woolies bag along, and you see me there picking up bits of plastic, and I've done it for a few years, probably 15 years. I saw somebody else doing it. I used to walk along and just feel a little bit cross when I saw it, and I think, well, wait a minute, they're picking it up. Do something. So the doing something about a problem is a good thing, I think. So it's sort of like a Pilates as you walk too. You're sort of walking, and then you bend down, pick up the bit of plastic. It's a complete exercise. So.
Well, I don't have any fancy artificial background on my on my computer today. I'm just in my.
I thought it was.
What's that?
I thought it was.
No, this is my kitchen table I'm on. So yeah.
Any final thoughts, Brad, before we wrap up?
No, look, I'll be interested in the outcomes of the meeting tomorrow night, and I just wish everyone running for council the best of luck.
Yeah,
great. Thank you very much. So, Brad, Peter, thank you once again for an entertaining afternoon. Others may disagree; they might think we're boring. I've enjoyed it, so I hope you've enjoyed it. You're welcome to join again Tuesday afternoon/evening, where we'll get back into sort of the policy discussions, and we might be able to do a quick reflection on the last council meeting for the year. We haven't quite agreed on the topic, so stay with me when we stop the live broadcast, and looking forward to talking to everyone again. Frankston, thank you for watching, and stay classy.
Thanks, guys.